I was more saying that I think that this discussion about including waste is already bracketed under the actual strategic objective A at the objective level. And since we are not tasked to negotiate, then I feel uncomfortable about inserting waste additionally in places where we haven't had that discussion on the higher level, and I think it should be a discussion is in IP4. So that's what I was trying to say. I do agree that the waste issue comes in other objectives as well, and I think we did have this discussion both in Bangkok and in the technical working group, but that we did not have the mandate to deal with that at that time.
Would you like me to respond? I can see I'm still unmuted.
You can, yes.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that is very well taken, those points. I think it's important that the targets then can there be generic enough while substantive to accommodate that, and possibly we can look into these distinctions also when developing the indicator types. So the indicators can refer to the chemicals or the waste, or if that is allowed under the scope.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Next, please unmute Bepul Saha.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Now in target B1, we are saying comprehensive data and information on chemicals on the global market. So I think it needs to be clarified or elaborated what is this comprehensive data and information that is definitely required when we go and compile the data. And regarding the waste, now when you were talking about throughout the life cycle, does it not include the waste? Because in the life cycle of a chemical, it is being converted partly into the another product, partly into the waste. So does it include waste when you talk about life cycle?
Next, please, Samia Godby.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. So I'm speaking on behalf of IPEC. In order to respond to the considerations of the objectives B, in new information, getting data to address gaps, greater transparency, accessibility, training, education. So if we keep the target at this level, so it is very vague. So we propose to add a smart. So our proposal is to add the year by 2030. So as a proposal, so that's we will get some data. And our proposal is by 2040, ICCA and CropLife have provided a living, publicly accessible inventory of comprehensive health and safety data for all substances produced by member companies. And it is related to SDGs 3, 12, and 16. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn Vickers, please.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair. Just raising a query about the words on the global market, because there are some substances which are withdrawn because of concerns about their hazard, but more work is still needed to identify the details of that and what further risk management measures might need to be taken because people continue to be exposed to them. So I'm thinking about chemicals that have been on the global market that are still a concern, but are not marketed any longer. I think would be interested to hear the comments of others on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Augustine Harte, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Agustin from Argentina. Just a couple of comments and a question. My first general comment would be this group, I think we have to follow up what other groups are doing, because the targets that are stated here, we need to make certain that we will have the elements under the new SICOM to address these targets. So that is something that we have to have in consideration. More specifically, regarding the targets we are seeing here, I have two short comments. The first one would be, I want to echo a previous comment on chemicals in articles. I think the target B1 may address them, but we might want something more specific for chemicals in articles. And in target B3, we are talking about health impacts, but I think we should also put there environment impacts, because we also need standardized methods to assess, reduce, and prevent environment impacts that are, sometimes are not just the same as health impacts. Finally, a question to the chair, and thank you, Sylvia, for taking this task. Will this group also be looking at indicators at some point, or it will only address targets? Because indicators will show us what we really need to do to address these targets. So I don't know if we will do that afterwards or not. Maybe you said so and I lost it. But this was an outstanding issue of the previous group, and I think we should advance on that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Well, we do have our mandate where we are mandated to finalize the targets proposals that are currently set out in SICOM IP4.3 with a view to enable multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral commitment and action. But we have not been mandated to deal with, to finalize indicators, but only to develop a set of recommendations for a process to establish indicators and milestones. So unfortunately, I have to tell you that the issue of indicators is deferred yet again. And I think that, I mean, we've had this discussion before in our technical working group and also in Bangkok, the need to reflect on these things together. And that is why I presented the log frame approach in the beginning, just so that we keep this in mind. However, it's very difficult, you know, with the mandate that we have and, you know, the overriding issue that we are asked not to negotiate, to move into targets that were not discussed in depth as far as their formulations in the technical working group, and also not in the paper. So that is why I believe we have been given the task in the way that we have been tasked. And I would ask you to consider and think about indicators as you're formulating targets, but we will not be dealing with specific target formulations in this group, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So next on our list is Jacqueline Alvarez.
Yes, so thank you, Sylvia. I would like to maybe pick up some of the points that were highlighted. One by Agustin from Argentina regarding environmental impacts. And we strongly believe it's really important to make reference to both impacts, the health and the environment. So we second that. The other element is the one on global market, and what WHO, Caroline was referring to. We understand that the issues of legacies is very important, and comprehensive data and information it's also required for those. If you are thinking, for example, of monitoring and areas and the contamination of environment or the burden of disease. So the global market part. And then the other one is related to my colleague Tessa referring to waste. And I understand your point very well, Sylvia, and the mandate that we have received, but would like to make the reflection that if the waste word, the waste word is not there while the word chemicals is there, then after the discussions at IP4 or ICCM, we might need to revise everything, and that might also imply revision of the targets. So a suggestion could be to have maybe a placeholder, not with a bracket, but indicating that there is still that missing. The other area is related to our understanding about the targets, and we think the targets need to be comprehensive enough, generic enough, but also the level of details will come at the indicators part, which is the one that will explicitly say what type of data we are looking for, what type of information we are looking for. If we, and you might recall that this target, B1, it used to be very long. Then we were requested to try to make it simpler. So it's an issue maybe of deciding also how the target, if the targets will be sharp and concise or will be describing many areas. And last but not least, I think one of the questions that this virtual working group might need to address is something missing? So, because the question you are putting forward is, do we agree that these targets fit the purpose of the objectives? Yeah, maybe, yeah, but I think we also need to see if there are elements that we are missing to talk about the objectives, the strategic objectives as they are now being defined, or the ones that we are using. And this is my last part, is also we need to have an overall view about how these objectives contribute to the vision. So are we going to do that exercise as well? And sorry, I was very long. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much. And I think that that the element of the placeholders is very important. I think we can use this both not only on the waste issue, but I think also on the indicator issue. So if we have, for instance, we're looking at B1, and as Jacqueline, said, we were asked to scale it down and make it less wordy. Perhaps what we need to think of as we move forward is consider what kind of indicators, just to have a place for what kind of indicators we're imagining here. So not adding all the words in the target, but having just a note that we expect indicators to cover X and X, X and Y, for instance, that might help us not make the targets that long, but also to make sure that we capture why we made this decision in leaving notes as far as what the indicators should capture. So that could be something that we consider. Next, I think on my list I have Aya's bike.
Hello, hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Ajaz Beg from Canada. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. It's a very nice and productive discussion. I just want to give two comments regarding the two earlier points has been raised with our colleague, and then one thing I want to provide as a feedback. So one of the questions, I think two questions they make by when we're talking about the chemicals on global market, someone asks, is chemicals as a substance or chemicals in product? So here I want to mention when most of the regulatory agencies throughout the world, they manage chemicals based on substances. Chemical products is a post-market issue. And once chemicals go in product, it become part of a product because I mean, many cases, chemical will not be any more individual. It will become a mixture of other chemicals. They combine together to form a product. So I think in that the scope of this discussion, I think we are dealing with the chemicals, substances. Second question discuss about the waste, which is very important point, but I believe in target B1, it is already mentioned life cycle. So when we are talking about life cycle, there are four major steps: the design, production, uses, and disposal. So disposal, which is the waste of the chemical, it has been already the part of the life cycle. When we consider a chemical, when we do the risk assessment or risk management of a chemical, we consider disposal. After the use, what's going to happen it. And when we're talking about what happened to chemical when it go to in a product, so it can come under the uses. How these chemicals after production, how is going to be used? What are the impact? So those are the 2 points which I want to mention it. And third thing, as a question was asked, what we can add, is there something missing? So I just want to just want to clarify, when we are talking about chemicals, does it also includes manufacturers nanomaterial? That's my question. I just want to clarify. Or do we need to add chemicals, including manufacturers nanomaterial? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Rory O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Sylvia. Just a quick clarification. You may have answered this in your question about having further details elsewhere, but I felt target 1B looked more like an aspiration of the target because the wording is so spare. It doesn't say from whom we want this data. Is it governments through export and import data? Is it primary producers? Could it be mining companies, chemical companies, or could it be suppliers? So I think we need clarity about that somewhere. And we also need clarity about to whom they provide this information, where it's going to be available to the stakeholders. For example, is there a plan for a repository, or is just the fact that it's going to exist somewhere an end in itself? I realise that ties into some other targets, but I wanted clarity on that. And on the clarity point as well, I think at some point we need further clarity about what we're talking about. For example, if someone says asbestos or someone says copper ore, many people might not think chemical. If you give them their proper UPAC chemical names, you know, calcium magnesium silicates or whatever, you are talking chemicals. So somewhere within the structure, maybe a layer behind, we need clarity about what we're talking about and from whom and to whom.
Thank you. Servet Goran.
Thank you, Sylvia, for giving the floor, and thank you so much for this very concise presentation. I just have one comment on the target B1, and this I think was also discussed back in Bangkok or in one of our technical working groups. It was about the need to have also a more holistic approach to all the targets that we are discussing. And in that sense, what I would like to see here is that we not only make available and generate data, but at the end of the day, we use it also to meet the SAICM objectives. And more concretely, the SAICM objective that would make sense to be used in this particular B1 would be to set up basic chemicals regulatory frameworks globally. Thank you.
Thank you. Augustine and Rory, you have your hands up still. Did you want to speak again, or? Augustine, you have the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry, I left my hand. Sorry, sorry.
No, it's okay. This happens with those hands, doesn't it? Okay. Okay, I think we can. So we've gathered some thoughts, and I think we've had a good discussion. And you will have an opportunity to submit also in writing. So perhaps we can move on to B2 now and discuss a bit on target B2. So I'll open the floor for that. Lauren Asif.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Just want to mention for B2, there were footnotes in the document for the IP4 meeting. There was a footnote for this particular target B2 that we had raised at the technical working group meeting. We had proposed to have standardized tools be at the end of the list, so it would be the most appropriate guidelines, best available practices, and standardized tools. And we had also proposed to add risk assessments. We wanted to make sure that we're talking about risk assessments here and be clear on that. And then we wanted standardized tools at the end of that list to make sure that the standardized wasn't modifying guidelines or best available practices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Yeah, we tried to condense it into a slide. So of course, yes, some things fell away, but they're not lost. Jacqueline, please.
Yes, thank you. And my comment here goes to the first part of the target, not only to the content, but the issue of the time frames. And I think we discussed that before, also at IP3, even at open-ended, there was discussion about that during the technical group. But it is very strange to have a deadline or a due date in this target when we are talking about tools, guidelines, and best practices, knowing that those things and assessments are moving targets for us. There are some things that we know, but there are a lot of things that will be coming back. So in a way, this is a generic comment on the issue of the buy. In some places, it's extremely relevant, but in some others, we might need to further think about having a time frame for doing that. Or once it's done, we assume we achieve our vision and we are not considering emerging issues or issues of concern that might arise. Just bringing this back again to the consideration of the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, I think we can move then on to target 3, where we have also an alternate. Jacqueline, please.
Sorry, is it? This is Andrea.
Andrea, I think you're, yes, I think Andrea, you're unmuted, so you might as well speak.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear who you were calling. Thank you and hello to everyone. Nice to hear colleagues' voices. So looking at target B4, the issue of alternatives is raised in terms of educational training and public awareness programs. But if you reflect back then to target B3, and I'm looking particularly at the alternative version, it strikes me that we need to include information, data, standardized methods on alternatives. So in order not to make it too cumbersome, I wondered if the word alternatives could be added after chemicals. So impacts of chemicals, alternatives, and waste for improvement of disease, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And Jacqueline, did you want to speak, or is that a hand raised from the previous? Okay.
Sorry, it was a mistake, the hand.
Okay, thank you. I think Bipul was next.
We have in target B3 an alternative statement also. So do we have to select which one we'll adopt? In that case, the second statement looks much simple and straightforward.
Sorry, did I understand that between the two, the targets B3 and B3 alt, you think the second one is more straightforward, correct?
Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying, that more
Yes,
straightforward and easily understandable.
Okay, thank you. Anastasia, please.
Hi, I just wanted to comment here that I prefer the wording of the original target B3, not the alternate, but I support the Argentina's suggestion to add in environment impacts as an important addition.
Okay, thank you. Bipul, do you still have your hand raised? Did you want to speak again?
No, it is from the previous.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any other comments on this target? Laura, please.
Yes, thank you. Just looking at the targets B3 and the B3 alt, it seems like B3 is more clear and more simple if that's what we're looking for in targets, which I think it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, please.
Hello, thanks again. I mean, I just wanted to reiterate that we need to include an environment in here somewhere, just to talk about burden of disease and cost of inaction is not adequate. So there has to be some form of including environment in there. Thanks.
Thank you. Jacqueline, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. And I will lower it right now, not to forget. So, no, my point with B3 is that the mechanisms to access information and tools. And it's referring again to chemical life cycle. So if I follow in my previous intervention regarding placeholders, well, the type of target B3 is the one where waste really fits very nicely with the concept. In B3 out, we have the word waste, but in B3 we don't. So if the placeholder concept will be in a way considered, that this target is one of those that really needs, for our understanding, have that word included. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Musa?
Thank you. Mine, I'm just looking at, we need to have platforms where this chemical use by each country can be addressed and create also awareness at national levels. But when I look at the targets, I can't see where we can have those platforms. Maybe when I look at target B4, it can come in, but I was looking at mainly target B1, that if we could reframe it and include it there, it could make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, do you have your hand up?
Sorry, no, that's a mistake. That's a mistake,
okay,
sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Auden then, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm just looking at the target B3 and as well as the alternative, and I see that it is not very clear who is the responsible party in these targets. So maybe we could strengthen the language on that one, or it should be clearly formulated in the indicators, perhaps. Another thing is that it may be challenging to measure these things as well. We should be able to measure some progress on these things, and we need to be careful when we are developing the indicators, I think, if we cannot specify the language a little bit in the targets, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we have no other comments for that particular one, we can have a round of comments then on target B. Sorry, target B4. Samia, please.
Thank you. So regarding target B3, as the same intervention, so the considerations of the target B. So we propose to add the year. So by 2030, so OECD establishes a living online publicly available global inventory of nanomaterials on the market. So we can get data, we can get new information, we can address the gap and have a greater transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Dina, please.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, as I read in my chat, we focus more on the health and the chemical and waste for the burden of disease. And how about the biodiversity? Because the country like Madagascar, we have the highest species on biodiversity, and we should teach the community. So I need that we put in this target B3 the point of biodiversity and the environment. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Hiroyuki, please. Hiroyuki, can you please unmute Hiroyuki?
Co-chair, I'd like to provide a comment about target B4 first of all. Well, we have a text stating a training and public awareness program on chemical safety, but I propose that we add benefit and before the word of safety. So we make this text into training and public awareness program on chemical benefit and safety. Because the reason I suggest this adding is to all stakeholders to make all stakeholders having awareness that chemical proper usage could give us safety and relief living in our world. So that's the reason why I suggest this insertion. And on top of this target B4, I also like to provide a comment about target B1. In target B1, whereas Dubai Declaration number 22 states, the confidentiality is essential to develop industry in a safely sound, in a sound way. So I propose that we add a text taking into account for protecting confidential commercial and industrial information and knowledge here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim Hopley, please.
Yes, good morning. I hope everyone is safe and well. Target B4, I'm just unclear on whether it's targeted towards community and or industry. I feel it could probably have the word industry or communities in there. Thank you.
Hong, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I just have a general comments to the target, because when we look at the objective, it is for the information. How can we generate meaningful information, and for people, stakeholders to take action. So we think all of the target should be for the purpose to generate information, and it could be specific what kind of information and how to generate information. But when we look at current target, some language seems to me is trying to say, it's not generating information, but rather than how we act based on the information. I think those could be important, but maybe not fit for the purpose. So I'm trying to say that maybe here we could be focused on what kind of information is needed and how can we generate information. So this is just a general comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Keith, please.
Hello again. I just wanted to quickly come back on one of the points that was raised by one of the speakers earlier about commercial confidentiality. And I think it's really important to say that commercial confidentiality cannot be used for an excuse to hide the hazardous properties of chemicals. And it shouldn't be in target B1 at all. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have quite a few hands up, but I can't tell whether you have left them up or whether they want to be up. So Andrea, I think next, please.
Thank you. My question is, so there are a lot of proposals that are being made for the text, and how is this going to be managed? Are you taking note of them, and then at some further stage, you're going to show us these alternative texts, and then we're going to discuss them, or are you going to screen them now, and we're going to discuss them? So, I mean, there's a lot of suggestions being made, and I think it's going to get a bit confusing if we don't actually start looking at what some of the text is going to actually be. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it's very, very difficult and very different kind of meeting, this kind of virtual meeting. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that people have an opportunity to speak, to be able to express their ideas so that others can hear. But we are also very much aware in such a meeting that not everyone is going to speak and have an opportunity to speak. So that's why we have this time between after this meeting to the 13th, that it's possible to send in your feedback electronically. And so we are taking notes, but I think that if you know, for concrete proposals in those should be resent electronically, because we have that opportunity between the 2nd and the 13th. And then we will be compiling this in some organized fashion. It's currently, I can't tell you how it's going to be done because we still haven't received those, and then we'll be going through them the next time we meet. So we will not be going through those now, today, because I think that people need a chance to look at them and to consider what others have said and to be able to come back to that. So that's the way we are going to proceed. And I mean, it is what it is. It's not an ideal situation to have these virtual groups. So we'll see how that works for our next meeting, and then if there are some other ways that we come up with that could alleviate the situation, of course, we'll try to think of them. But this is our course of action right now that we're suggesting. Okay, I have quite a few hands up still, but there are those who have already spoken, so I'm not sure if they have mistakenly left their hands raised. So Semia, would you like the floor?
Sorry, I kept my hands raised. Sorry.
And Dina also has her hand still raised?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add.
Hiroyuki, did you want to speak?
Especially, maybe it's systematically malfunctions.
Okay, so I understand those who still had their hands raised want to bring them down. So if you can do that before we move on, that would be helpful. when we move on to the next one. So, just before we move on to target A, I just want to make it clear then that we are now going to be collecting until the 13th feedback electronically on the existing text that we have in front of us for the targets B. So the ones that we have just discussed. And as you think about this electronic feedback, then consider the discussion that we have had. And obviously those who did not take the floor, you have that opportunity also to give feedback. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the targets A. Okay, so similarly to the B, we have this slide which is showing you the strategic objective A as it is formulated right now, and as people have already noted, it's still with brackets, and this is not something we will be discussing in this group because we have not been tasked to deal with the formulation of the objectives, but this is the general idea of what the objective should contain. And the considerations will help us to reflect upon what exactly was meant, if not by the exact formulation of this objective, then at least what the targets should address. And here we have the focus of our work, which will be looking at the targets and their formulation. So under target A, we have 5 different targets that were formulated. These are targets that are extracted from the meeting documents, SciChem IP4/3. And then we move on to the next slide. So yes, so briefly, we just would want you, similarly to as we had with target B, is to reflect upon these targets in relation to the objective. So the objective as it stands with its considerations, and do we agree in general that these targets fit the purpose of the objective? So now I'll open the floor just for a brief exchange on if we feel comfortable and do we agree that these targets as they are here fit the purpose of the objective A. Teruyoshi, please. Please unmute Teruyoshi, please. Sorry, can you please unmute Teruyoshi?
Mr. Teruyoshi is unmuted.
This PC is not Teruyoshi's PC.
Oh, sorry, madam, sorry.
No,
Please
yes,
start.
no. Yeah, I was so surprised. Yes, thank you very much for having this good meeting. Just want to point out that the considerations shown under objective A is wrong. It's for objective C. So I hope that the Secretariat will rewrite it or change to the correct objective A consideration. Thank you. It's for issue of concern. So in the distributed documents for requesting for electric submission is also wrong. So I hope that the Secretariat will rewrite it. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for noting that, and apologies. So many eyes looked at this and somehow we didn't catch it. I'm very sorry. So the considerations for objective A, can we move back maybe then to the slide that we have on that? Just to have it up on the screen for a bit for people to reflect. You have to move back to slide 4, I think. Yeah, sorry, not slide 4, but yeah, more ahead to the one that has it's separate. Yeah, this one. Oh, back. Okay, so here are the proper considerations. So looking at basic capacities, legal frameworks, institutional mechanisms, including illegal trafficking, assumption of responsibilities of various stakeholders. So that's the scope for and the considerations for the strategic objective. And my apologies that we got that somehow didn't catch that. So we can move back then to the slide with the targets, so it's easier to. Okay. So Matthias.
Thank you, Sylvia. Good afternoon to everybody from the European Union. Just some brief comments with regard to your questions on the targets under Objective A. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
We are a little bit concerned with regard to some of the new proposed targets under this objective, because for us it is important that the targets relate close to the objective and at the same time are smart. And we found that that is not the case for all targets under Objective A. We see potential for exploring further options for targets through identifying gaps and presenting possible modifications and issues that might be better reflected. For us as EU and member states, it's of importance that targets under Objective A do respond to the national establishment of the overall orientation and guidance document agreed upon at ICCM 4, where legislation and national capacity are essential. We will submit more detailed comments in the procedure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Michelle, please.
Yes, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you very much. I have very few general comments and then I will comment on A. As I was not taking the floor earlier, I would like to comment that we very much welcome this virtual process to advance the work. Thank you very much for outlining the process. We support the endeavor of working towards targets and eventually milestones. And Switzerland also thinks that it will be important to capture across these objectives the issues of waste. We would also like to flag that we are open to the number of targets under each objective being different from objective to objective. So there don't need to be equal number of targets. Regarding Objective A, where we are at now. We think that some of the targets that we have now are pertinent to the objective. We would also like to further comment in written. We would at this time like to flag that we think the targets are not complete. Switzerland had suggested at the IP3 meeting upon request for draft target under this objective, a target on private standards. And so we suggest this target be added under the strategic objective A and potentially could be placed between target A4 and A5. The target was briefly already discussed at the IP3 meeting, and therefore there are considerations on the wording, and there are some brackets. It currently says by XX minimum requirements for private standards, labels, and certification schemes are defined and reviewed on an ongoing basis. Potential for harmonization is explored and adherence increased and applied by private sector and monitored by governments and other stakeholders. And as I said, there are a number of considerations on the wording. The rationale for this target is that as part of the framework, stakeholders should be able to share standards and schemes that are not set by governments. And those standards and schemes should be analyzed and discussed within the framework. And the aim is to provide best practices after having reviewed the different requirements of those standards and schemes from the point of view of the sound management of chemicals and waste. The wording I have mentioned now is contained in document IP4/3 in the appendix. And as I said, we are very open to have further on a discussion how the wording might be further improved. And I'm happy also to send this comment electronically. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Augustin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of general comments for strategic objective A. We also think that these targets here are not enough. For example, we haven't covered compliance mechanisms and enforcement, which is part of the objective, as you showed previously on the other slide. Regarding the targets that we are seeing here, we think that A1 and A1 alternatives are both important. For one instance, A1 alternative is talking about all stakeholders, but A1 specifically addresses governments that should have action plans. So, and that is something important that we also want to capture. The other targets here are addressing different stakeholders, government, non-governmental, and companies. We could unify a criteria to shorten this list of targets, but to have them, all of those stakeholders listed in one place. And my last general comment would be regarding the last target, A5, from compliance of the multilateral agreements. If we are going to mention some other relevant instruments, we should clarify which one are we talking about. We mentioned health and labor. Other relevant could be to abroad, and so we should clarify which instruments are we addressing other than the multilateral environmental agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have similar concerns that were, I believe, raised earlier by the EU member. We feel that some of the elements of the objective have not been captured in the targets. In particular, Canada feels strongly that the targets under Strategic Objective A must include the development and strengthening of national legislative and regulatory frameworks for chemicals management at the national level, since this is critical and was deemed critical under the OOG process to achieve the sound management of chemicals and waste globally. However, we also think that the important roles and contributions of other stakeholders also need to be described and included, and we'll provide more specific ideas as to how we think this could be accomplished in our written comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Samia, did you want to speak?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Sylvia. So regarding the periodically review plans to achieve, we know that many developing countries are facing a problem to update on their review plans for the legal binding framework, like the Stockholm Convention. So what about the cycle, which is voluntary? So I think somehow it is not achievable if we leave it as vague as it is. I would like to add that just last week we get the international campaign on lead and paint, and we know it is a voluntary campaign, and we get a lot of results and a lot of movement. So it will be great. That means if we have a specific idea, so on this target, for example, on lead and paint, and to specify about the thresholds of 19 ppm, and even we have to add also by 2030. So that's I think it is like achievable by the countries, and even for developing countries, for the campaign on lead and paint, we have some results. We have increasing of the number of countries that are moving towards the law on the lead and paint. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura, please.
We also agree that it's important to emphasize the need for countries to have chemicals management systems at the national level. So we would like to see that reflected somewhere in the targets. And also, we don't think that national action plans are necessarily needed because they are pretty resource intensive. And then one more point, target A2, we think this is could be sufficiently captured under objective C, so we don't see the need for this target. Thank you.
Thank you. Hiroyuki, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak?
I don't raise my hand, I'm afraid.
Okay, it looks raised to me, so sorry. Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to have any general comments on Strategic Objective A? Okay, if not, we can look at individual targets now, one by one. I have a feeling we won't get through all of them, but we'll see. We'll take some comments as we go, and we will, see how far we get, and we'll still leave some 5 minutes, I think, for the end, so that if you have any questions about the follow-up. So. Okay, so we have then target A1 and A1 alt. If there are any general comments on this particular target and its alternative. Alden, please.
Yes, hello. Thank you. I'm just seeing that the target A1 and its alternative, they refer to measures needed to be implemented should be identified within SciChem. So to me, this indicates that such a process needs to be defined then, that we would need to have a procedure for how to identify these measures under SciChem, and that has not been identified at this point, I think.
Thank you. Olga, please.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. To me, target 1 is pretty much clear, but I suggest to add that periodically review plans. That periodically revision of the plans should be conducted by all stakeholders, by all SciComm stakeholders, to ensure that it's not only government that conduct periodically review of the plans, but also industry, and also, yeah. So I think this is important. And as to alternative number A1, I also agree that the measures have not been identified yet. So either they should be identified or the preference should be given to Annex 1 or to A1. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bipul, please.
Between target A1 and target A1 alternative, in target A1, we are mentioning specifically countries and governments, but there are many other stakeholders in the process. So from that perspective, I think that alternative target A1 is more appropriate.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I just want to support the previous speaker. I think the alternative language of target A makes more sense. It's important to discuss those matters, in the post 2020 approach, because that will enable the stakeholders cross country to implement the amendment in a same time frame, or just appropriate time frame for multiple countries. That could maybe just helpful, because I don't think that all the countries, they could take action individually. That may not they might not so effective, and some chemical was not produced by all of the country. There must be some kind of coordinated action on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexandra, please.
Yes, thank you, Sylvia. So your question here on the slide is, do we agree in general that these targets fit the purpose of the objective? So I would like to say that from my perspective, identifying measures is not enough to achieve any objective. So we identified a lot of measures in the existing SciChem, and we all know what the evaluation said about this. So I think it should definitely be measures being implemented and not just identified. Identified is not enough. So everywhere in the text, it should say as a minimum, measures implemented to prevent or minimize harm. Actions to prevent harm are implemented by governments. Measures needed, well, here in also in target A4, measures implemented to prevent or minimize harm. So it's just identifying, from my perspective, is not enough. It has to be already implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we have no other comments on the targets A1 and A1 alternate, then perhaps we can take some comments on target A2. Tessa, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. With regard to the targets A2, A3, and A4, with preventing and minimizing harm, we would like to suggest to explicitly link here to the impacts on biodiversity and climate change. In addition, in general, we think that this objective should be worked on by all stakeholders. And finally, perhaps there's an opportunity to rationalize a little bit between the proposed targets A2, A3, and A4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alexandra, did you want to comment, or is that a hand raised from the previous?
Sorry, previous. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, taking Tessa's suggestion, then I will take comments, since we don't have that much time left, also on 2, 3, and 4 together. So if there are any more comments on those 3, then to supplement Tessa's comment, then please. Samia, please.
I think we should have so to get the considerations and to fit the considerations. So I think we need to have in the targets 2, 3, and 4. So the terms and the concept of phase out or phase down of any issues. That's because we have some toxic chemicals. So, and this is, we cannot be open, like, and not to narrow the hazards of the chemicals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no other comments. We have a bit more time if anyone still has comments on target A5. Okay, I have 2 hands still raised, but I have a feeling you're both raised. Okay, yes, my mistake. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, I think we have some time, so perhaps we just leave a bit more time for questions if there are any on the follow-up. So if we can move to that slide, perhaps. So the next step. So yes, this is a challenge for all of us, both having this type of meeting, and also it will be a challenge to see how we move forward. So what we're doing now is we're going to collect feedback electronically on the existing text for targets under the strategic objective B and strategic objective A. So we're looking for feedback on the text for the targets of those two objectives. So that's important to understand, that we are looking for the comments that will come on the target text. So we're not asking for others. If you have, as was noted during our discussions, some placeholders that you feel it's important that we take into account, please, give us that feedback as well, comments. If possible, we would really like to encourage you as participants to have discussions with colleagues in your region or in your sector to combine ideas and interests in joint submissions if possible. We understand that this is not, it's difficult, there's not much time, but we would like to encourage you to do so because it makes it a bit easier then for us both to, not only compile the different submissions, but also, during our discussions the next time, it will be a lot easier to go through your submissions if you have had some combining of these. So this helps both the Secretariat and myself when we're here as co-facilitators to prepare for the next meeting, because then our next meeting is on the 23rd of November, which means between the 13th of November and the 23rd, we will be compiling these, and we will make them available before the meeting. But it's hard for me to promise now how much further, but definitely before the meeting, so that you have at least one day in between to take a look. So we are going to be quite strict about the 13th of November because we just can't continue, adding on submissions. So please do take that into consideration and do submit, make your submissions by the 13th. And if there is a region or a sector or, a group of countries or a group of stakeholders that would like facilitation in organizing a call so that you can similarly, as we are now, in a quite large group, there's 96 of us now, you can in a smaller group of 10 or whatever you would like, the Secretariat could help you to organize such a call. So just to take off the logistical issues, you can flag this, and we would ask you then to notify us by sending an email to Delphina by the 4th of November. So if you plan such a call and you think it would be valuable, then please contact Delphina, and she will help you to make that kind of call possible in the time between the 4th and then the 13th when you have to make the submission. So that is our suggestions for the next steps, and I'll take questions by hand raising. Perhaps it'll be a bit easier for me, and then you can all hear also the questions if there are any at this time about the next steps. Any questions about the next steps?
Hi, Sylvia, it's Brenda. I just raised my hand.
Can I just, please. Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Just one quick comment. We noticed there were a couple of errors on the slides, and we apologize for that. But they will be fixed up in the version of the presentation that we post on our dedicated page. So just be ready for that, that the updated version is there, will be there, and we'll include that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Brenda. So Keith, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, it's just a comment. And I just want to say that I realise that we're working to a very tight timescale and it's not easy for everyone, but the 13th of November is quite tight, and it's going to be very difficult to meet that. I think for future, in its recommendation for future calls, it would be quite helpful to have that flagged up in advance so we can start priming people so we can have some clear ideas of when the deadlines are, what subjects are going to be addressed in subsequent calls, so that we can start collecting things so that we're not from a standing start. That might be useful. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think now it should be up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brenda or Delphina, but the virtual working group meeting calendar is up, and it does have a clear indication of the input from what time to what time after each meeting we expected. So you can take a look at that, but just so you know, I mean, for the next meeting, which we have on the 23rd, again, we have, 7-day input period. So, it's the reason we're doing it is just so that you also have a chance to be able to look at the combined document. So if we make it too tight, for ourselves, then we're also not able to compile it to get it back to you to be able to prepare for the next meeting. So we are trying to find the most optimal situation that we can under the circumstances. So we appreciate your patience with us.
Thanks.
Andrea, please.
Thank you, Sylvia. Just a question for clarification. So there were several suggestions made today. Will those be included, or do we need to submit those in a written format? Thank you.
So I would suggest that the suggestions that are made, that you do also submit it in a written format. Yes, it will make things easier so that we don't waste time not having captured something. Jacqueline, please. Jacqueline, please. Can I ask you to unmute, please, Jacqueline Alvarez?
If you can hear me, my application has kind of crashed, so I'm not able anymore to unmute.
Okay, but I can't either, right? So do we need the people to ask their questions in the Q&A then, yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my apologies, but Jacqueline, I think, had a question or a comment. And who else do we have here? Olga. So I will have to ask you to write in the questions section then, please.